So we're going to get into it. I'm going to show you a video that was shot entirely on an iPhone. This was shot on an iPhone and color corrected and edited on pretty simple software. And it looks really good. I bet you a lot of you wouldn't guess that it was made on an iPhone. So.
Merde.
Cool. We're going to get into how we can do that because most of you guys have smartphones. But before we talk about the medium, the phone or the camera that you use, we're going to talk a little bit about the basics of cinematography. And it comes down to two things that without these two things, there would be no movies or photographs or YouTube or even us here right now seeing each other. And that's light and shadow. Every single composition of visual media is based around these two things. And if you get even just a basic understanding of these two, then you can exponentially increase the quality of your videos. The first one we're going to talk about is lighting because it's what creates the shadow. So if you understand that, then shadow becomes a lot easier. And there's two main types of light. And all the other light are just different shades in between. And these two versions are hard and soft. And it seems a little funky. It seems a little bit like a songwriting 1 class, like how can light be hard? You can't hold it. But it actually makes a lot of sense. Here is a picture of Meryl Streep. No, I'm just kidding. It's not Meryl Streep, but it's this lady. And you can see right here a clear difference between hard and soft. This is the hard light. And you'll notice the shadows that are cast by her jawbone and her nose and even her head on the wall that she's standing in front of. And the reason it's hard is because those edges are hard. This is soft. And it makes perfect sense. All the shadows are now beautiful. And there isn't that hard defining line in between where, it's lit and the shadow. So if I were to survey everybody in here on which one is more flattering, I bet it'd be a 95% would say her, the one on the right, soft light. And there's a reason for that. It's because that's what we're used to seeing. That's what all production, TV, film, basically everything, they aim for soft light because it's just more flattering than hard light. And when people start making videos, typically they don't even think about lighting at all. They just turn on their camera. And if they start thinking about lighting, the first thing they think of doing is grabbing that desk lamp and turning on that light bulb right next to their face. So we're going to talk a little bit about the light bulb and about how to acquire soft light. Because soft light, I've seen videos that were shot on terrible cameras but had professional soft light, and it looks like it was shot, on a Red Epic or any other really expensive film camera. The main difference comes to the size of the light source. The smaller the source, the harder the light. And the bigger the source, the softer the light. There's a little bit of science behind it. I'm not going to get too in-depth, but this is hard light. A light bulb, has that filament that's like the size of a pea and like 4 times the thickness of like a human hair. It's like tiny. So all the light is spewing out in all directions from that thing in straight rays. So when it has an obstruction, like this beautiful black wall that I drew, all the light behind that wall will never get filled in. It's just a shadow. Whereas with something like a window, the light is pouring in from so many different angles that when there's another obstruction, the light can fill in those gaps because it's coming from so many different angles. And that's how you create that soft light. That's why those shadows on that lady's face were gone, is because there was light cross-canceling those shadows. And it's kind of like the same principle as a football stadium. If there's a soccer player like standing in the middle of it, you don't really see any hard shadows, any dark shadows. You'll see 8 faint shadows, and that's because each shadow that's being cast is being cross-canceled by all the other lights. So we're going to talk about how to make it soft. It all relates to this magical word, diffusion. And it's a kind of a scientific thing, but basically what it does is it takes those straight light rays that are coming from that light bulb and it disperses them. It gets darker when you go through diffusion, but the quality goes up. One of the ways to do this is to use, this is the cheap way, this is the DIY way that I used for a really long time, is to use parchment paper, or tracing paper works too, and you just wrap a couple layers of this around a light bulb, and you're already on your way to getting a soft light. This next picture is just one of the many resources online. I mean, if you Google anything these days, you can find out how to do stuff. But this guy has a slightly bigger light, and he's tracing it, which, you know, that's the official way. I just use the rubber band and just tie it around the light bulb, which is a little ghetto. But that's part of learning how to do something, is doing it ghetto sometimes. And this is a slightly more expensive option. This is a 2 by 3 foot softbox, where if you just pop a 100-watt bulb in there, or more, whatever's accessible to you, you're looking at some really nice soft light, studio quality light for $45. I mean, if you just put that, you know, right here as a key light, you know, and you turn your camera on, you'll be like, wow, I can't believe it. And here's just an example. I mean, they use them in all studios, and they're not that much money. So that's one way to get some really awesome quality light in your videos. Now knowing that soft light is from large light sources and hard light comes from small light sources, raise your hand if you think the sun is a hard light. It's actually a hard light because to us on Earth, it's that tiny little speck in the sky. So if you go outside and stand on a sunny day, you'll see that hard shadow behind you. Like this tree shadow. Hold on, I meant to go to this one. There we go, cool. But sometimes you go outside and there is no shadow at all, although everything is still being lit by the sun. And that magical word, diffusion, is happening here. The clouds are acting as a ginormous softbox, basically. And it's a blessing for all us filmmakers and photographers because it's instantaneous, beautiful, diffused light. So really cheap trick is to go outside on a gray day and do some filming, because it's going to look a lot better than a sunny day. There's many times when a really intense, dramatic, hard light can be used. This is a video I shot where I used one single light as an extremely hard source. And every time she looked straight at the camera, there'd be insane shadows. But it's part of the look, and here's another movie. This is It, the Terror from Beyond Space, and they're using a hard light here. It's cool, it adds to the emotion of the piece. So, much like any other rules in art, it's just a guideline. So we're going to talk a little bit about the medium. Obviously, everybody knows things have changed a lot. And I mean, although her dress, you could actually probably find that at Urban right now, so I'm not going to say that's dated. But That camera's dated. That's circa, I think, 1965 or so. Things have gotten a lot smaller, a lot cheaper. Small disclaimer, I'm not sponsored by any of these cameras or any of the products that I showed you today. These are just ones that I've heard about and, you know, just kind of common stuff. So I'm not asking you guys to go out and buy this stuff. So here's a couple of the different mediums that people are recording on. And there's a lot of differences between all these on the screen right now. But there's one similarity, the main one. They all shoot video in this format, 1,920 pixels by 1,080 pixels, HD. And that's really all that matters. At the top, you have your smartphones, which pretty much, if you don't have a smartphone by now, then you're probably a Luddite and probably shouldn't be tinkering with YouTube anyway. So I'd hope you have a smartphone. And they all take 1920 by 1080 video now. And below it is just your standard Canon camcorder. Takes great video, 250 bucks. I mean, you know, it all depends on how much you're getting into YouTube, but here's a couple really popular options. And at the bottom is a Canon T2i or T3i or 4i. We're going to talk a little bit about how to film now, because nothing screams independent and nothing screams I don't know what I'm doing than really, really shaky footage. And I say really, really twice, actually, because there is a technique to add a little bit of shake to footage. It's called documentary style or cinema verite, and you know, even big budget movies use it, like Saving Private Ryan and District 9, and pretty much any movie that you see these days has that kind of shaky feel, and it's because that makes it feel real. Our minds are used to seeing documentaries be a little bit shaky, so that when we see footage that's a little bit shaky, our brains think that it was actually happening, that there was a guy, you know, on that battle in Saving Private Ryan with a camera running around as like a documentary person, when really they did it a bunch of times. But that's just what our brain does. It's kind of interesting. But one way to help control that cinema verite or documentary style shaking is this little gadget, if you're using your iPhone, the steadfast handle. Just getting your hands off of your device can help a lot. Just because of the weight, you're shaking, getting your hands off the device can decrease that small jittering that happens. And here are a couple really inexpensive options also to be able to throw up your phone and do a couple videos like acoustic covers or whatever you do. There's links to all this stuff in a resource email that's being sent out later today. So if you're actually interested in this stuff, then you'll get a link to the Amazon or whatever. And then that's a really cheap tripod. And I mean cheap price-wise, because I've actually used that one. And to hold a really light thing like an iPhone or like a flip camera or a Canon PowerShot does the job. You know what I mean? I mean, you're not going to be filming Avatar 2 on it, but it's all right. So this is the stuff that really excites me. Because I'm a cinematographer. I started in high school doing music videos for really bad local bands and realized that I really liked it. And then realized I didn't want to go to film school because the competition to actually be able to film bands would be so high because all the seniors, all the incredible senior film students would be able to do all the projects. So I came here to Berklee because I love music too, but I also knew that I'd have a sea of awesome, talented people to film. So this is the stuff that I really love. We're going to talk just a little bit about the technique in framing, how you frame your shots, which most people don't think about it. The first one we're going to talk about is the rule of thirds. And I swear to you, after I tell you this, a lot of you might even know it, but you will notice it everywhere. In every commercial, in every movie you see, you'll be like, oh, that's that rule of thirds. It's everywhere. There's two parts of it. There's the vertical rule of thirds and the horizontal rule of thirds. This is a screenshot from a feature film that I shot this past December in Maine. It was a $110,000 micro-budget feature, and we all froze, almost. It was a blast, but I learned a lot about cinematography on the set just being around a bunch of people from LA. Vertical rule of thirds, here we go. Basically, you split it up into three parts. And the idea is to always frame your subject, to have the subject's eyes or just face, general face, on one of those divider lines. That's basically it. It seems pretty simple, but you'd be surprised that if you just started to work this into how you compose almost every shot you do, severely increase your production quality. It just looks more artistic, I guess, you know what I mean? Here's another example. This is a fireside scene from the same movie, and here I'm using the rule of thirds for the entire frame versus just this other one. I don't know if I can go back, but that other one had empty space on two parts, and then she was on the right third. This one I have the fire framed, you know, on the right, empty space in the middle, and the subject on the left. Once again, just another example of the rule of thirds. And then here's a horizontal rule of thirds. This one just happened to work out that not only the horizon, but the trees also ended up being part of the rule of thirds. That doesn't happen often. I didn't realize that until I started making it. But you typically want to aim to have your horizon be on one of those divider lines. Here's a couple examples of movies that made no money and nobody liked them. Practically embarrassments that are using the vertical rule of thirds. And in King Kong in the bottom, we have two versions. They're using, I have a really bad sense of humor. They're using, they put subjects on both the divider lines. So you see it everywhere. And then here is another example from another embarrassment. I think Peter Jackson is in jail for how bad it was. But horizontal rule for thirds. You can see that little mound of grass that they're hunched up on right there is on that lower divider. And oddly enough, all their eye lines are on that top divider. You'll just notice it everywhere. But it's funny because, like I said earlier, with every rule in art, it's more of a guideline. So there's millions of exceptions to this rule of thirds. Another couple example of failures, and you can see that they're framed in the middle, not anywhere near the rule of thirds, other than a little bit of horizontal. But they're clearly breaking the vertical rule of thirds here. But it's an extremely powerful shot. I mean, you know, they're conveying that she is surrounded. And so, you know, it's all about what you're trying to convey to the audience with how you frame your subjects. Uploading. There's a couple really important parts that you need to stick to when you're exporting your video from your editing software. And one of the main ones is you aim for a compression codec that's called H.264. And this is like the MP3 of video. It's compressed, but it still sounds pretty good or looks pretty good. And actually, in all actuality, H.264 looks better in comparison to how MP3 destroys audio with its compression. So, in that video, I go over how to make sure that you're exporting in H.264. But that's one of the most important things. It just looks great. YouTube loves it. Obviously, have fun. Does anybody have any questions, just kind of on the technical side? Yeah, Yusuke.
So, dude, you first came to my attention from the band Me vs. Gravity, and I saw this awesome video called Begin. Has anybody here seen that? It's amazing.
It was actually shot on this stage. Did you know that?
I did not know. I was going to ask you what your involvement was in shooting that video, what that process was like, if you don't mind.
Absolutely, yeah. Let me just get this going here. That's good. The reason I'm playing this is because the performance shots were shot here on the stage.
Lately I've been looking around, trying to find my way up, find my way out, find my way somewhere I can call my own.
Let me get a frame going on the actual performance part so that I can talk about, let's just see if I can get a frame going.
And I'm ready to fight, coming into.
Okay, we needed haze. Like when I first heard this song, when we were working it out in a studio in Chicago, I said the music video needs to look huge, just because it kind of feels like that combination of electric and rock type thing. So I just wanted a lot of haze. And of course, you can't do haze in here unless you shut off the fire alarm system, because it triggers it. So to shut off the fire alarm system, you have to not only shut it off in this room, but the entire 130/136 building. So what that means is you have to get firefighters, 4 firefighters to come and like monitor these little switches. I don't know where they are. It doesn't matter. It was a really big deal. And yeah, so we had to coordinate all this ridiculous stuff like that. And then we came in here. We got in here really early in the day and spent all day. And then I edited it for like a month, and had a lot of fun color correcting this one. When you have so many flashy lights, like you can just go to town. So that was a little bit what it was like. A lot different than our first experience.
Can you tell us anything you think is important about picking out lenses? I only have one right now. It's just a little prime lens. What else should we have in our arsenal?
Can I guess what prime lens you have?
Go for it.
So I love playing the lens guessing game.
Right on.
Do you have the 1.8 50mm?
Indeed.
Thank you. Goodbye. So that's a great lens, first off. That'll get you great depth of field, low light, and it runs, what, $120 or something like that. Do you have the kit lens?
No, that's the only lens I have.
Okay, wow. Well, that's cool. Most people buy the camera with the kit lens. The kit lens is actually a pretty good lens. If you're looking to get a T3i or T4i, and you're not planning on spending that much money, get the kit lens because they're great all-purpose lenses. The low light capabilities aren't spectacular, but you know, they're good all-around lenses. And if you're going to get a different lens than the kit lens, the 1.8 50mm would be the first one I'd get. And then I'd get a detail lens. They make a, 135 to 250 zoom lens that costs like a little over 100, I think. That is great for details. And in my music videos, I love doing details. So, you know, get really close up on stuff. So that would be what I would get after a prime lens, a 50mm prime lens, for sure. Guys, thank you. Like, this is my favorite thing to do, is talk about cinema. So, thank you, and enjoy the rest of the day.